Welcome to Dolby Creator Talks. This is a show about how artists use technology to tell their stories, and I'm your host, Glenn Kaiser. Today, we're discussing Maria, the new film about famed opera singer Maria Callas from director Pablo Larraín. I got to see an early screening of the film at the Telluride Film Festival, and I've been excited for months to speak with the team who brought all the extraordinary vocal performances from Maria and Angelina Jolie to life in the film. Joining us today is Academy Award-nominated re-recording mixer Lars Genzel, Academy Award-winning production sound mixer Mac Ruth, as well as sound designer Gwenole LeBon, and Academy Award-winning supervising sound editor John Warhurst. Speaking of awards, the film is already garnering quite a bit of Oscar buzz about Angelina Jolie's incredible performance. She trained for months to sing opera at a professional level, which really needs to be heard to be believed. Throughout the film, as it tracks the ups and downs of the life of Maria Callas, the sound team blended newly remixed and remastered original recordings of Maria with live performances from Angelina Jolie. So that's exactly where I wanted to start our discussion, by asking about Angelina's process for singing Callas's vocals live on set. Let's hear from the team.
There was quite a prep process. Obviously, she had to, it's a visual occurrence, an audio occurrence, it's a performance occurrence, and she can't even start to reproduce Maria Callas type performance without a lot of practice. So there was, some serious prep, a team, opera coaches, and and so much credit to Angelina for the work she put in. But she prepared herself, as better than anyone could. I like to think that Maria Callas's biggest competitors, who were lifetime opera singers, couldn't be Maria Callas. So the bar is incredibly high. But she prepared for all of this, which was the first step. We're not talking about faking it. We're talking about actual performances. When we talk about percentages of her and some painting, the lines and the breathing, that's all part of the process. But we absolutely went into this, with the idea that Angelina was gonna do this live. Even that wasn't necessarily a given. John and I had a long Zoom call with Angelina in prep to discuss this, whether or not this was something worth our time, worth our thing. And ultimately, it's the respect for original performances that I think held out here, that sort of dominated the conversation. And again, she has to move the air. She has to do the face. She called it face singing because it's so unnatural. It's not a pop song in your shower or in your car where you kind of just go along with it. It's constantly changing tempos and dynamics that's super hard to reproduce. What she did was incredible to even begin to approach this. So she had a team, her opera team, and her personal team, her family, her boys are part of her thing, and they and us and John and the music department preparing for this, and Pablo. I think it was a big part of Angelina's support system, and to even approach something this challenging, but it was absolutely live.
I agree with everything that you're saying. Is it Ave Maria that we start with at the very beginning, that first opening moment of the film?
Yes.
That's just the close up on her as she's singing. And you're right. Like what's happening in her face, the muscles that are moving, and you can see it all right there. It's just, it's quite stunning.
That was the first thing she did, wasn't it, on set? The first thing she did on set was the first thing she had to sing on set was Ave Maria. It was the opening of the movie, and it was an extreme close-up. And obviously, I think once that one was done, then it made a lot of the others easier after that, because that was the start of the movie. And as Mac just said, the thing that people don't sort of think about with this sort of thing, especially when you're asking someone to live sing on set, they think, oh, well, you just got to go and live sing on set. Well, actually, no, you're not going to go and live sing on set. What you're going to do is you're going to go and live sing 20 times. You've got to do it from all the different takes, all the different angles. So you're doing it again and again and again and again, and people's voices get tired as well from doing that. It's quite demanding to ask them to do that. But she was really, I mean, she once all the discussions happened, like as Matt was saying, we had a very long Zoom with her, discussing about the sort of process and why the approach to it and what would be the best approach. And Pablo was involved in all of that as well at the beginning. Then she totally, I mean, she's a filmmaker, she's a director herself. She totally understands from a filmmaking point of view. But the thing is as Eric Vitro said, her vocal coach, he said, I mean, it's not like just singing pop songs, right? It's not like singing like a popular song. We're talking about Maria Callas. We're talking about the most iconic voice of the 20th century, one of the most iconic voices of the 20th century. And even actually to be able to get your mouth around all of those things that Maria Callas would do is a lot of training just in itself. Even just the visual performance, never mind the actually strengthening up the abdomen, the lower, the diaphragm. All those muscles need to be strengthened up to be able to even come close to being able to get that kind of power out. So yeah, she was, but she just totally went for it. We were. There was a bit of a moment where we were chatting with Mac. We were like, "Do you think she'll really?" And it was like, but then we had the Zoom with her, and she was like, "Okay, let's do it." And I was like, "Okay, great." So yeah, but we all knew that by her embracing that would just go so far for us in post production. I always say that these kind of films, especially those scenes, they're all made in prep. You make them in prep. Everything's made in prep. And then you go on set, you execute all the things that you decided upon. And then post-production is just about putting everything together that you've prepared for. So we knew once she decided that she was going to go for it, that it was going to be great for us in post-production.
It's truly amazing work, and her performance is just it's stunning to watch. So our good friend director Pablo Larraín has said that sometimes Mac, I think you said this, the percentage thing. Sometimes it's 1% Angelina, sometimes it's 10%, sometimes it gets up to like 70%, and of course the rest being Maria Callas. And he talks about it almost as if on the final mix stage, like you had a slider that you could just kind of move back and forth between all Angelina or all Callas. We know that it's not that simple. So I would love for you guys to let's roll up our sleeves and talk about what actually was happening. What were you doing to achieve that blend of the vocals?
So the process as an overall, and sort of talking about, whether there were any sort of pre-records or things like that, there weren't any pre-records. There was nothing was pre-recorded. It was all Angelina on set live and Maria Callas. So the first sort of step and the first realization was how, we needed to be able to work towards Angelina's recordings, working with, it's not actually to match into Maria Callas. It's actually to match into that recording of Maria Callas. And each recording is different. They all span different times. So you're working against different recordings which have different timbral qualities. And let's also point out different timbral issues because some of the recording techniques back in the sort of early magnetic era of recording were not as we can record today. So it was honestly, it was just a huge amount of manual work. I sort of discussed it with Pablo about the fact that it's kind of like audio painting in a way. What you're doing is there's two things we're trying to achieve. We're trying to achieve a great performance, a believable performance. So it has to work on an emotional level. It's almost like comping these. It's almost like, years and years ago, I used to work in the music industry where you would have to kind of comp singers together. And when you select all your takes, it needs to work as a whole as well. You can't just decide on the best bits here and there. So it's a question of making it work as a whole, making it work, deliver still on an emotional level, but also very importantly for all of us, making it work on an utterly believable level so that nobody ever questions her performance, so that when you watch the movie, nobody's been, because what happens when it looks a bit fake is that you slightly drop out of the movie a little bit. You don't quite believe. I always say we're all, one of the things that we do amazingly well as human beings is looking at a face and listening to the sound that comes from that face. This is how we all communicate with one another. Everybody in the world is an expert at this, and it's hard to sort of trick people, with this sort of thing. So we were. The important thing was the absolute believability, but also working on an emotional level. But then again, even the further step, which we haven't sort of talked about, is working on a sort of story level between Callas in her prime versus Maria in the week leading up to her death.
Rather than thinking of the process as a slider, going like, oh, we've got everything prepared here, and then we just blend between the two. It's more like John says, like this painting with the sound. It's sometimes we need a touch of the Maria red here, and sometimes we need a touch of the Angelina red here. But it's really on a second by second or less than that, frame by frame selection that we need to make, or we needed to make to get the best result out of Angelina's performance, marrying it to Maria Callas's voice, blending from Angelina's dialogues into a singing scene, or going back, like these transitionings, finding the right kind of breaths, which often are Angelina's breaths from on set. Even if we are in Maria Callas's prime, we found that having those breathing sounds is one of the things that definitely helped glue the voice and the image together. Even though for a professional opera singer, and if you listen to the original Maria Callas's recordings, you don't hear that much of these breathings, but for the purpose of the film, it was a device that helped us marry sound and picture together. And then it was just going further down that rabbit hole, like, oh, where are the consonants? Because we need to be lip sync on these things. And in Ave Maria, so some of the consonants, even though mainly we're using Maria Callas in her prime as the main voice, then there's the consonants from Angelina on set blended with that. So it's a huge puzzle piece in a way, putting all of that or having put all of that together and then blending it, and how much of that, how loud.
I remember Laurie Stinson, who was her opera coach on set, saying, "No, but you'd never see opera singers breathe. They work a lot at that to try and." And I was like, "Oh yeah, but in this movie, it'd be great if she did breathe a bit, so we could use some of that material." And she was like,
"Yeah, but also, I mean, this is a movie. You're in close up, which is, so you're here, and that's not the way you should be listening to opera singers sing opera. You want to back off that. So it's just a different approach to the capture."
Yeah, but that's one of the beautiful things about cinema, right? It gives us the opportunity to be able to see and experience things in a way that you don't in real life. This is what's wonderful about cinema is being able to, like you say, you would never stand that close to an opera singer face to face with her singing at you in your face. It'd be extremely loud, and probably want to make you back off a little bit. But
I mean, that's implies one of the other challenges that we had to face, because we used those original Maria Callas recordings that were meant as opera recordings, so they sort of tried to capture the whole stage and not a close-up of her voice.
Yeah, I want to get into that in a moment, but before we leave this topic, I'm just kind of curious a little bit more about the process. So the painting with the voices, and sometimes syllable by syllable or putting consonants in, was that John? Was that work done by your team in editorial? Were you guys on the mixing stage sorting that out, or how? At what point did all of this come together?
So before Pablo could even screen the movie, then we need to kind of create temps, you know what I mean, so that he could even sort of play back the movie. So we needed to work on all. And like as Lars was saying, it's things like, there's certain moments where maybe it doesn't work. You try to put Maria on, it doesn't work. You say, okay, well let's actually use Angelina's performance on that bit, but will it blend into this bit before? So you're constantly trying. Oh, well, actually, if we could use this word from Angelina, then that actually it works really well, and we totally believe it. So it was a combination of going through, and like I say, we had to kind of construct these temp versions even before Pablo could sort of screen the movie, because he didn't want to screen the movie with it just with it either as Maria or with it either as 100% Angelina. He wanted to be able to, no, we need to make it work first. And so we did the temps, and then we talked a lot about the fact that so much of it is to do with sync and everything else, and there was a huge amount of work that we could really get into in the final mix, because it's the perfect room to do something like that. It's a huge screen. We're all there. Everybody's there, and we kept going up and down. We kept sort of talking about this. It was first used in sports, actually, the kind of incremental advantages of tiny, minuscule percentages. It's like, is that 0.1% better? Yeah, it is. Let's have it then. Let's add it. Anything that's even 0.001% better, let's take that. And this sort of endless approach of going up and down, up and down, up and down, and just trying to, and sort of sometimes you do things, is that better? No, it's worse. Okay, no, put it back. Is it, well, and so there's this, they're like combing through again and again and again and again, and just working. I think we spent 3 days mixing Ave Maria. That was the first one to really. And not all in one go, actually. We kept going back to it, didn't we? Because we weren't happy. With the first one that we did for the kind of the sort of, we did like a temp mix. We started the final mix with a temp mix, which is always, it's okay. We need a version, but we need it in the next 3 days. Okay, well, we did temp, so we did that. But I don't think any of us were really that happy with Ave Maria. None of us really felt as though it was there yet. So then we went back again and again. And Pablo was the one he was pushing for that as well. Obviously, it's the opening of the movie, as we know. Openings and beginnings and ends are always the key part.
Well, you guys have touched on this, but I want to dive into this a little bit more, which is the original Callas recordings that you're kind of matching into and blending into. And so the period of time that we're talking about, I believe, is like 1949 is the earliest material, and it goes up into the 1970s. So obviously, I mean, not only is that radically different from the way we record and playback performances now, but you're getting quite a bit of variation even between 1949 and into the 70s in terms of how they would have recorded and then mixed and mastered those original recordings. So, I mean, you've got a wealth of material, but I presume you're not going to tell me that you had access to a lot of stems from all these performances, right?
Of course, that was the first thing I asked. I asked Warner Classics. I said, "What do you have for this?" And they went and looked in the cupboard and said, "No, it's completely bare. What you've got is what you've got. This mono recording of Maria." And like I say, some like the early ones, that's the kind of span of, this sort of magnetic era of recording, isn't it? For the late 40s through to the mid 70s of trying to sort of get these different recordings. And we spoke to the estate, and the estate sent everything that they had as well. And it didn't get any better. We realized that actually the Warner Classics versions had work done to them. And I remember discussing with Pablo. We said one of the most worrying aspects of this is that it's important that the film sounds like it's 2024, and it feels right. It feels good, and so and
it's in Dolby Atmos. So
exactly, and it's Dolby Atmos. Yeah. So what we did, we spoke to Warner Classics and asked them if there'd be any way if they could look. I tried to do some separations myself, but then they were okay. I used RX and things like that, and some other, software. But I know that Warner Classics have like deals with companies that do the source separation. So we were sort of back and forth. I mean, we were still receiving things in the final mix. There was one particular one that we were never happy with, which was the
Ome Babino.
Ome Babino, yeah, from the London recital. From literally, that was one of the last concerts she ever gave, which we wanted to separate the piano out. So once we got these sort of separate Maria Callas vocals out and done it the best way we could, then we had the separate instrumental part and then the separate vocal. Then that meant that we could start the sort of cleanup process of her vocal. So we could take out all the sort of all the kind of artifacts and the sort of noises and stuff that's got nothing to do with Maria Callas's musical performance whatsoever. It's literally just the kind of stuff that exists, that's part of the recording process. So obviously get rid of all of that stuff and do the same part with the orchestral part as well. And then the realization that we're never going to get it to sound amazing in Dolby Atmos. So what we did, we went back to Budapest with the Budapest Scoring Orchestra with the help of a Hungarian music supervisor there, Csaba Falti, and we re-recorded all the orchestral parts, matched them very, very closely, then sank the mono back in again into, because whenever you do those source separations, the best result you can get is actually when you put them back together again at the end of the process, because a lot of artifacts appear from the process which disappear when you put them back. So we'd kind of sit the original instrumental part back into this sort of brand new Dolby Atmos mix. And then the important part was then we had Maria's vocal separate, which meant obviously for all of these cinema mixes, we can put Maria's vocal in the center channel, which is coming from the mouth then. So you've got this feeling of Maria's vocal being from the center channel with this sort of brand new Dolby Atmos. And the main part why that was so important as well is because the whole story hinged on it cutting between sort of present day Maria, as I was saying before, this sort of Maria who's really, she dies within that week, compared to, as she calls it, La Callas in her prime, when she was absolutely. And the only way we could really tell that story was through an exchange of power. So when we cut back to the past, the important thing was that it was incredibly powerful, that her vocal was powerful, that the orchestral parts were powerful. And then when we cut back to the present, we cut back to just Maria on her own in the kitchen, say, trying to sing to her housemaid. Or
I'm going to stop you right there because we actually have this clip. So I want to demonstrate sort of in practice, or demonstrate what you're talking about as you practice it, which is this. This is a great clip of Maria. This is very close to the beginning of the film when she's in her apartment in Paris. She's singing for her housemaid. She's trying to figure out, if her voice is back.
Rune, I want you to listen, and I want you to be honest.
This is just, it's now that you've described that process, I'm just fascinated. John, take me back a little bit more about the process of separating the original recordings and getting separate elements. So, I mean, we were all kind of stunned when we found out about what Peter Jackson's team, was up to on that Beatles documentary and the AI tools that they were able to use to kind of separate the pieces out. Is that what you guys were using? Were you using a similar process?
Yeah, so I mean, there is sort of a lot of software that's readily available that we can do that with. As I say, RX has its own version of that, and there's many other sort of pieces of software out there that will do that with. But also, a lot of the record companies now, they have like deals with various companies that do that sort of thing. That might even I don't know what software. They're often quite sort of closed off. Whenever I ask them what software is it that there's it's some company we have a deal with, and I've never actually managed to extract what the software is, but I always ask and I keep asking. But yeah, and apparently they have deals with different companies. They use various companies. And so there was one, in fact, the Omea Babino that had the piano separation, there was one company that did it with where the piano was still in the vocal a bit more. And we kept pushing more and more and saying, is there no way this could be any better? And they said, we know this other company. We'll try this other company. And it came back and it was really well separated. So it seems
and they're able to do that without, they're not introducing artifacts into it. It just comes back. It sounds magical what they're able to do.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like I was saying, there are some artifacts, but when you put it back together again, you lose those artifacts. So that's why it's important to maintain, when we come to the final mix, that we've kind of we maintain the original mix as a whole. Once we've done our work on it, once we've done all the cleaning up work on it that we can do now, right, with all these tools of sort of almost just painting out all the crackles and the sort of shashy noise that we don't want. And then when you put it back together again, you sit it back together, and you then lose some even more of the artifacts by putting it back together, which is a sort of a good technique, which then helps us to be able to set it into those brand new Dolby Atmos mixers, which then means that we have the power right from Maria's separate vocal, which we can then continue to work. The great thing about having Maria's vocal separate is because one of the big things as well was trying to match Angelina's on-set recordings, as I was saying before, not just with Maria Callas, but of that recording of Maria Callas. And that was the thing that we noticed, how timbrally different they are. So you can't just say, oh, we've worked out how to do that. We'll do that with all of them now. It's like, well, no, they're all wildly different, the recordings, the actual Maria recordings.
Yeah, maybe, I mean, the one of the things with Omea Babino was actually also that we kept pushing for a better source separation, because we couldn't get two things right. One was to have the piano sound nicely, and the other, which was a constant topic on all of these recordings and performances, was reducing reverb, because all of these original Maria Callas recordings were recorded far away with the mics. So, but we are going into close-up shots, so we have to get rid of the reverbs, and so if John, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think with Omea Babino, because I think during the last week of the mix, we finally got this differently separated version of the vocals. We were finally able to actually get rid of the piano that was recorded with that vocal and use the piano that was recorded on set.
Yeah, but we also matched in some of the original. We're trying to match the original piano and the on-set piano. That was another thing we wanted to do, right?
Exactly, but it was like pushing for this and trying to get the recording clean was like it gave us some more freedom in doing these things. And Omea Babino might be like the most extreme example, but for me, one of the biggest benefits of having the vocal separated as much as possible was gaining control over the distance, the felt distance of the voice, because we had to get her close, not only to match the close-up shots, but also to make it feel like a 2024 movie.
Even Angelina, when I saw her, she said to me, "How did you do that thing where I'm like really wide and then I cut really tight and it sounds really present?" And I was like, "Oh, it's a special technique that we managed to work out." So yeah, even she was impressed by the ability to be able to kind of move the distances. But yeah,
Gwen, you have been so very patient. I want to draw you into the conversation. I got to tell you, I'm mesmerized, especially, for that scene that we just saw. I'm so mesmerized by Maria's apartment in Paris. I think I want to live the rest of my life in that space. It's just it's a gorgeous location. And Mac, so I presume that this was a built set on stage. It was not? What was it?
I'll speak to it. It's an absolutely real, beautiful flat in downtown Budapest. With all its warts, squeaky floors, traffic, everything. You're the things you might expect. But it really was a grand flat that probably was something very similar to what Maria would have lived in Paris, and we embraced it.
Well, that makes this question for Gwen even more important, which was I'm kind of curious because you made it sound like it was in Paris in 1977. So tell me about kind of the acoustic treatment of that space from a sound design perspective and how you kind of built that environment of her apartment.
Well, we tried to choose sounds that would fit exactly the place where she's living in Paris, which is a very calm area. It's the 16th district of Paris, which is really there's not much life. It's just big avenues and some sparse traffic. So we tried to get as much as we could to what we would have been able to hear, like in 77 in Paris, with very old cars and some light neighborhood. And we tried also to bring in some of, for example, we used like a blackbird as a sound that comes from the outside, because she talks of it about it in a scene with her during a rehearsal. So we tried to have all these elements, and actually I have to say that production sounds helped a lot, because we have all this wooden floor, all this natural acoustics that bring this real life, and that help us to believe that all this was happening in 77. And also we had a very precise work with Foley, and we made a lot of work to blend what the Foley team did with what we had from Mac from the shooting. So I think it's really all these elements that makes it believable. I hope so.
Very much so. Very much so. Yeah, it was very successful. I want to talk about the narrative decision to place the movie in the final week of Maria Callas's life, and this is a period when she's really addicted to pills, and obviously her body is kind of starting to fail. I feel like that opened up a lot of sound design possibilities for your team, because obviously a lot of the movie takes place in a kind of a drug-induced hallucination. There's some magical sequences that are just visually stunning, but I want you to talk about the possibilities that opened up from a sound design perspective, because you didn't have to be literal, obviously.
The thing is that we didn't want to have like some her hallucination is something that happens in her mind, and we see it on the screen. I mean, this character Mandrax is on the screen, and the thing is in the same place, is in her imagination, but in her flat. So we had to find a different sound to make the audience understand that it's not the sound that we would normally hear. And actually, it's quite a silent flat. There's not that much elements. It's the one that I explained just before. So we thought an interesting thing was to go inside Maria's, to have an inner point of view, and to bring something which was something close to like the background noise of the body, and something like very organic. And so we have like the voice from Mandrax, which is from her imagination, and we have also something which is the sound that we all know, like when we are in a very silent place, or when we have an earplug, we just hear a very light background noise. And so we use this kind of sound, so it makes something little, just a little, not weird, but different. It's not silence, it's not real silence, it's organic silence. And also we played with that during the mix, because, for example, we have less reverberation when she has taken Mandrax. The sound elements are not mixed exactly the same way. So it's almost like reality, but it's not reality. So we really understand that it's really different, and it's her point of view. And that's what is the main thing, actually.
Those moments of silence and how long they could be suspended for without people thinking, has it actually just broken, or is it still meant to be part of the track?
Yeah, because I mean, Pablo was Pablo wanted to find something for those few moments when we're going very extremely subjective, when she's just taking the pills. He wanted to find something that feels organic, but that is not showing off at all. And so what we actually tried was just pull everything out and leave her alone in a sense, leave her alone on the screen. Because what she's doing with the pills is she's trying to shut the world out. She's trying to shut out the voices in her head and whatever it is. She just wants to be on her own. So we had long discussions, some discussions about like how long can we actually keep that silence before anybody in the audience would be like, oh, has the film just broken? I just got to get out of my seat and ask the projectionist. So, I was very skeptic, to be honest, in the beginning, like that we could actually keep it this silent for so long. But we watched it a couple of times, and I think it works. And it doesn't take you out of the story. Actually, it gets you more engaged and gets you on the edge of your seat, hopefully.
Digital silence is a dangerous thing to play with in a cinema, right? When there's nothing left, literally digital sort of silent, like when there's nothing left, it's a tricky thing to play with, because normally you'd always leave something going, just something, but to actually go completely, yeah.
It's interesting. I really like the way you talk about that. It was her strategy to kind of isolate from the world, and so you represent that acoustically. But then, of course, when she goes into the moments of these full-on hallucinations, like when she's walking down the street with men, and then the guy starts singing Verdi at her in front of the Eiffel Tower. Like, I imagine that was a moment actually when you could really open up and kind of play with Atmos and kind of put everything all around us and really like immerse us in the insanity of these hallucinations.
That's the Trocadero sequence. It's a great example, also, like how we were able to use like some of the choir recordings from set in the final mix. Like Mac recorded the sequence on set.
Those guys were all singing live on set?
Absolutely. They were wonderfully prepared, and it was a wonderful experience to experience it on set like that. It was big, loud, and tight. It was awesome.
In the mix, we were able to play with it a little bit in terms of the perspective. So whenever we're on Maria, there's a little part of the guys singing, going to the back in the prosceniums, and then when we're on the choir again, we're more on the front, and then also when we cut back to sort of like the objective reality. That is one of the very few moments where we have a lot of detail in the soundtrack, in the environments, with scooters going on, driving off, baby screaming, pigeon flying away, and that is like as much Dolby Atmos detail as we could get into that short moment, to just contrast it from that silence in her apartment, and especially when she's on mandrakes or just taking the mandrakes. And so it's a great example of like where we tried to create a lot of contrast between that objective view and the subjective view that is most of the film.
Another one of the major set pieces of the film is Maria's rehearsals. She's trying to get back in voice to she's thinking about a comeback. And Mac, I love that space. Wherever that theater was just what an amazing space, but also very obviously live and reverberant as well. Matt, can you talk about working in that space and kind of your approach to capturing, again, we've talked a lot about capturing Angelina's vocals, but this is a moment when her vocal performance really falters. And so that must have been a very difficult thing for her to perform and for you to capture.
If we want to talk about the space, again, this is a very real space. This is the Franz Liszt Music Academy in Budapest, where they have essentially the World Cup of piano every year. It has all the street cred. Her performance deserved to be in there. But again, we were also recording the piano live. It was all performed live. Her singing was live. Scene after scene, and especially in beautiful places like this, which we embrace, it was a reality layer to experience this on set. The whole environment has to work real in order to motivate the performances. And we were eager to record the piano live, to record the dialogue live, to motivate Angelina's performances to sing live in wonderful spaces. Real places that look good and sound good. So it was a real joy.
It's great. Lars, tell us about mixing that sequence.
Well, it's actually the sequence where I think we use Angelina's voice most when we capture her, because it's such a fragile moment in Maria's career and in the story of the film that it just felt so right from her performance that that's the thing we had to go for. And then obviously we're going from the orchestra to the piano accompanied Angelina singing Maria. So we had to figure out also the transitions, cutting back and forth, and for a long time, we kept that with hard cuts to sort of separate the two and make clear that it's another version of Maria singing, that she's not in her prime anymore. And then at some point, Pablo said why don't we try to crossfade between Maria in her prime and the rehearsal stage, and that actually was an interesting approach, because you could hear the two voices at the same time for a split second. And it showed you again that she's not in her prime anymore. She's not in the same at the height of her career anymore. And that's what basically that sequence was all about, making clear she's not that, and she's never ever going to be that again, and realizing that.
Mac, we've talked a lot about the pyrotechnics of all these operatic performances in the sequence, but one of the things that, having watched the film a couple of times now, Mac, it's for all of you, John, Mac, Lars, Gwen to an extent, just the quality of the dialogue in this film, I think, is just remarkable. It's such a pleasure to listen to. The voices are so, it's just, it's a really, really clean track. And so, we've got a clip. I want to show a little bit of the work, not necessarily in the pyrotechnics of the opera. So we have a clip from this is a short clip from the first time that Maria meets Aristotle Onassis at a party, and they're walking around and chatting.
I'm ugly, but I'm rich. I'm Greek, but I'm from Argentina. I'm married, but it's 1959. So, to falling in love through binoculars, I watched you through these.
You love me, and yet you've never set eyes on me before tonight.
Oh, now I'm offended. We met in Venice at the film festival. But I guess there were a lot of movie stars, so you forgot the little ugly guy. Well, I didn't forget you.
So, Mac, tell us a little bit about that, about the capture on that particular sequence, and then I would love for you guys just to talk about the way you handle the dialogue, because, as I say, it's beautifully recorded and edited and mixed. It sounds great.
Thank you. again, this was a wonderful acoustic environment. This is a very grand ballroom in a library, now the Central Library of Budapest. It's a beautiful space. We had playback choreography on the dancing in this sort of party scene. We had a lot going on there. But when they meet, we bring them together. Look, it's, in terms of set capture, if you respect the performances, then you respect the process. And we were always given a chance. It was essentially a one-camera movie, which I believe plays a lot into the ability to get beautifully recorded tracks in those spaces. We have an experienced team, and everyone works together very well. It was absolutely fantastic. You're right. The performances were fantastic. And when you're given the chance, that's when you're going to get great results. When really the actors' performances were amazing in an amazing space, and it all happened real time.
Overall, we have a minimum amount of ADR in the whole film. I think it's one of the films in recent years with the least amount of ADR that I've had. It mainly for changes in lines. So very, very little technical ADR, and then you have these actors with those great voices.
The guy who's playing Aristotle Onassis, that voice is just pure magic. Yeah, you want to touch that as little as possible, right?
No, Haluk Billinger, he's amazing. I did a film with him a couple of years ago, and he just has this amazing voice that you can just I don't know, he could read the phone book and I'd be like and so if you have these fantastic actors and actresses, you just want to fall in love with their voices, and it's actually something that I remember Pablo saying on the first Zoom call we had together. He said, like, this is a film about a voice, so it is essential that also the dialogues just sound nice and pristine, and you just want to listen to Onassis, Maria, Ferruccio, to everyone, and they all have great voices because they're amazing actors, but again, as John mentioned, like, it was all shot on 35mm, so there was a considerable amount of cleanup that had to be done, and a lot of it, Dominic Schleier, our dialogue editor, did a lot of that, and then we did another pass during the mix.
Pablo made a very wise decision, which is not to hire a composer to do a score for this, because if you've got all this great opera, of course you need opera to score the film. So, you're using a lot of existing opera pieces as score through the film. And tell me, were these new recordings? So tell me about that material and the way you mixed it into the film, and especially if you were using Atmos, with those new pieces.
Yes, it's all newly recorded orchestra, but I mean, that's basically due to John putting that together and initiating that, and then Sam Okel, who mixed the score, did a brilliant job blending it, and so
sorry, was that the same orchestra that you were using to do the new Maria Callas recordings?
Exactly, the Budapest. So when we got those sessions together, we said, "Oh, actually, and by the way, we also need Parsifal. We need La Traviata, and all these other. And we got everything that we needed together to go and record at the same time. So we went and got as much material as we could.
But that also means that Pablo had to make those decisions about which pieces he wanted.
There's a kind of a musical map to the whole film that was being discussed very, very early on. There's a lot of pieces that are the pieces are meant to kind of basically mirror where Maria is in the story of the film. Like, say, for example, when she sits down in the restaurant with JFK, we hear a piano version. Those piano versions were actually recorded right after the film had finished shooting. And that's the piano piece you hear is Addio del Passato, which is from La Traviata. And it's when that's an aria from when Violetta knows she has tuberculosis and she's going to die, and she knows she's finished. And so this it sort of mirrors Maria's moment when she knows that Aristotle's having an affair with Jackie Kennedy, and she knows that they're essentially over. So this is why we're here. And all of the pieces throughout the film have this kind of, it's like a whole musical map that was kind of mirrored and built into the story as well. So it's meant to be mirroring where she is in her story in the film as well.
Well, it's as I said, it's truly remarkable work. Gentlemen, it's been a great pleasure to have you on the Dolby podcast today talking about Maria. And congratulations on all the great work, and best of luck as we go into award season.
Thanks so much, Glenn.
Thank you. Thanks.
Many thanks to Lars, Mac, Gwen, and John for joining us on the show today. And an extra special thanks to our friends at Netflix for helping us put the conversation together and for providing those clips. Be sure to check out Maria, now playing in select theaters and streaming on Netflix in Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos on December 11th. We will have links, as always, in our show notes. And if you'd like even more conversations with artists and filmmakers about how they use technology to tell their stories, be sure you're subscribed to Dolby Creator Talks. With awards season upon us, you won't want to miss a single episode as the clock ticks down to the 97th Academy Awards on Sunday, March 2nd, live from the Dolby Theater in Hollywood. You can find links to our show on all the major podcasting platforms, including the video version on YouTube, in our show notes. Or you can simply search for Dolby wherever you get your podcasts. If you're curious to know more about what we do at Dolby Creator Lab, head on over to dolbycreatorlab.com. There you'll find information about all of our programs. You can access the entire library of episodes of the show, and you can sign up for our mailing list. Until next time, this is Dolby Creator Talks. I'm your host, Glenn Kaiser. Our producer and editor is Michael Coleman. Our executive producers are Amanda Schneider and Jack Ferry, with additional editing by Matt Nixon. And our production coordinator is Karen Marroquin. Thanks for joining us.